You started out by saying that the department needs to raise money. You talked about reducing oil revenues. And I think we all appreciate that you're looking for ways to help balance a budget and raise money. But as you said on an earlier question, some areas are too precious to mine. Coastal waters are too precious to drill for oil. So just another thought to keep in your mind. I want to just briefly talk about this whole issue around science, denial of science, climate change. It's kind of a recurring theme with this administration, and I think many of us are always on guard looking for places where this topic will be purged or not discussed. Again, coming from a coastal state where we're already worried about sea level rising, changes in our fisheries, sea level temperature changing, ocean acidification, it's already had a huge impact on my state, and there's a lot of fear around it. Again, because of some of our biggest industries. So my understanding is that there is a pending report about the national parks and the impact of climate change on the national parks. And there's been reporting to say that there's been some editing of taking climate change out of the document and removing any references to things about human-made climate change and greenhouse gases. And I'm not in the debate anymore. Humans have an impact on climate change. I'm just done with that. And you have said that you're not editing it. That's not going to happen. So I would just like to hear your reassurance that these reports are either something that happened in the past and you're going to change, or it's really not going on. And when that report comes out, I personally don't want to see it edited to remove any reference that we have a coastal national park in our state. And again, I think it's extremely important that departments like yours are paying attention. And the second thing that's somewhat related, I just want to put in there, is some controversy around Susan Combs becoming the acting Secretary for Fish and Wildlife. And, excuse me, because I don't think I know her, and so I don't have any personal issues here. But because she's been frequently noted as someone who opposes the Endangered Species Act. And I know this committee in particular, we have differing points of view on it and when it's well used and when it's not. But again, coming from a state where the bald eagle has made an amazing comeback in a community like mine, you can see one virtually every single day fishing, and that is the result of the changes from the Endangered Species Act. So I know it's a complicated issue, but it plays a really important role. And to have someone in that position who comes at it with an opposition to that, I just want to know how you think she can perform that job with so much bias.
First, on the national park document, I never change even a comma on scientific things. So how did that report get to you? Because it didn't get to us. Nobody in Interior in Washington ever saw that document. It's a draft document as far as I understand. It was FOIA'd from a university, and it was still in a deliberative process. So no political has ever seen that document. And I haven't seen the document. So I want an investigation how that document got around to the press. It got before even we had a chance to look at it. I think that's fair.
Fair question.
Another report with a U.S. document that I wanted to see before they released it, it had to do with ANWR. Because I want to know why the USGS report was so radically different. This is an assessment on natural resources. Was so radically different than a same assessment just conducted a few years before. And they were significantly different in assessment of resources, given the data set was very similar. And I want to know what techniques they were using. So
given that it shouldn't, I agree, you should have the ability to have a draft document and people state their opinions, but can you assure me that you are not going to deny any references to climate change and that you will allow for the inclusion in documents from the Department of Interior that have a human impact on climate change?
Yeah, if it's a scientific report, all right, I'm not going to change a comma of it because I think that's the integrity. And my director of USGS, he's an astronaut. And it's taken a year to get an astronaut with a PhD in science that's had a top secret SBI, SCI security clearance. He's probably arguably the best director, most qualified director we've had in the history of the USGS. And that's saying something because we had John Wesley Powell and some icons. It's taken over a year. And with Susan Combs, that's not her permanent place. She's been nominated to be number 3, not in Fish and Wildlife, but there's holds on her from a few named senators that I would like to have her confirmed.
So we all have our issues with the Senate now and then. So again, will you confirm that while she's in that role, she will not be actively working to undermine the Endangered Species Act?
She will not be actively to undermine any of our environmental protections that are reasonable, although we both agree that Endangered Species Act is that it is very difficult when a species has recovered to either downlist or remove a species. And quite frankly, when a species has recovered, I'd rather spend the money and effort looking at species that are in challenge, because we have a lot of species that are in trouble. So we got to look at the processes. When we put a species on and a species has recovered, we should all celebrate that the Endangered Species Act has been positive, and it was a Dick Nixon bill. So great, we should celebrate in our victories. And then we should focus our efforts on the species that really need help, but we need to look at off-ramps too. And so we're looking at that as part of a structure without deteriorating in any way my responsibility of being the steward of your public lands.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.